This is AFL.com.au. The fixture for 2013, the Toyota AFL Premiership season is out, and there is a lot to talk about. Here to do that, the two men who pieced it all together, the AFL's General Manager of Broadcasting, Scheduling and Legal Affairs, Simon Lethlean, and the Chief Operating Officer, Gillon McLachlan. Welcome to you both. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, mate.
This has been a lot of work, hasn't it, the past months in the planning?
Yeah, well, Lethers lives with a computer in his room and sort of outsourced his wife for 2 months. He's done an amazing job. It's an extraordinary amount of work that Simon does and runs it, and with a team of Emma and Thea and his broadcasting team, and I'm very proud of the work they've done. All
right, let's get straight into it then and take a look at round one, opening round, and it is split in two. It begins on Friday, March 22 with Adelaide and Essendon at Amy Stadium, and then the Western Derby, Fremantle and West Coast at Patterson's Stadium on Saturday, March 23. Then over the page, we can take a look and show you that Carlton and Richmond, that traditional Thursday night match, kicks off the second week, and then no Good Friday football. This is, of course, the Easter weekend. We then get into a bunch of important matches, concluding with Hawthorn and Geelong on Monday, the 1st of April. Gil, why is the season starting in this way?
I think we made it pretty clear during the year that we were keen to start on that weekend, the 22nd of March, so we could play working backwards from the last weekend in September. We'll play our 22-week season over 24 weeks to give all our players 2 weeks rest. We weren't able to do that because of the unavailability of particularly the MCG, but also the Gabba and other venues. So ultimately, as we look then, we still kick off that weekend so we can get a Friday night and a Saturday night over 2 weeks. So we have 1 week with extra primetime slots. We can push and promote those games in the first week. But I think if we had the venues available, we'd play all of the games that first weekend. But it is what it is, and it gives us a vehicle to promote the games in a number of distinct slots.
Where are you on that right now in terms of negotiating with cricket, particularly here in Victoria, in terms of trying to get this, and how much of a priority is it to try and get this sorted out?
It's a huge priority for us. We have had an ongoing dialogue with our players, and sort of priority 1, 2 and 3 for them is to be getting a couple of breaks during the year. We worked hard at trying to make that happen. We've spoken a number of times with cricket and spoken with the state government, and ultimately we want to continue to hopefully have a productive dialogue to try and solve this problem.
All right, and still no Good Friday football. The Commission's pretty much against that, aren't they?
I think for the foreseeable future we'll leave it as is. So, but if you look at that through that first week, great to be opening the season in Adelaide, a big Friday night game, the Derby in Perth, a blockbuster Easter Thursday, a really interesting game, the GWS Sydney game on Easter Saturday in the twilight slot on the back of the show, and a cracking game on Sunday, Geelong Hawthorn. So there's some big games in there.
Something that is really interesting about the fixture this coming season is school night footy. There's more matches on Monday nights and Thursday nights. Explain that for us, Simon.
Yeah, probably gets one more game than, I guess, 2012. We've got 2 Thursday night games, one in round 1, obviously, then one in round 14 off the back of the bye. So West Coast versus Essendon, which would be a big game in Western Australia, and 2 Monday night games. So we had 1 Monday night game in 2012, the, I guess, traditional game now of St Kilda v Carlton on that post-Mother's Day Monday, which we're continuing with, that Eddie had. And the second one is, I guess, celebrating a public holiday in Western Australia on WA Day, which is the old Foundation Day, West Coast versus Richmond, which is a different feel, a public holiday game in Perth, which I think they'll embrace. Friday
nights is an interesting topic as well, Gillon. Over the journey, we've seen a lot of debate about who should get the right to play on the Friday night stage. Has there been a philosophical shift, perhaps in the past couple of years, that you really do have to earn the right to play on Friday night?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, whether it's a philosophical shift or an evolution, maybe they're the same thing. Friday night, last year I think it averaged about 1.3 million people. It's our the biggest slot in our fixture, you know, I think there are a number of clubs who you know, own a number of supporters who don't want to watch teams being beaten by 15 goals. I think clubs understand that they have to be at a certain level of competitiveness as they look forward to get that slot now. And last year 4 teams didn't get a game on Friday night. This year it's 5. So I think there's an evolution, and maybe it's reflective of a moment in time when we've got, you know, the expansion phase going on, and there's probably more teams at the moment who are probably not going to win more than 5 or 6 games, 7 games or whatever it is. So we've made the decision to really make Friday night as strong as possible. And I think we're very well supported by the clubs in that. They all know that. They support it. And frankly, I think a number of clubs, as they rebuild, take Melbourne or a club like that, they probably don't want to be playing Friday on the big stage until they're ready to play there.
Simon, the other really interesting time slot is Sundays and twilight matches. Do you just want to talk about the Sunday 3:15 bounce matches? Obviously, they're on free-to-air TV in Victoria. They are a big deal. And clubs have been pushing for more twilight footy, haven't they? It's become a really popular time slot.
Yeah, I think so. I think Saturday twilight and Sunday twilight are very popular now with our teams and our fans, and we saw a great Saturday twilight final between Hawthorn and Adelaide. We've certainly made, I guess, some changes to our strategy to get some good games into those slots, or certainly some better quality slots. But Sunday afternoon, got some great games early on. I think Carlton and Collingwood play in round 2, which is obviously a big game everyone's waiting for. Collingwood Hawthorn on Sunday afternoon, and some great twilight games, Essendon, St Kilda, and a few others later in the year. So some real quality in those spots. We
are going to witness history on ANZAC Day with the first ever match in New Zealand. Gil, you've already announced this news, but this is obviously a huge deal, and the precursor to it will of course be the traditional clash at the MCG. So we've got an ANZAC Day doubleheader. This is huge.
Yeah, the time zone works perfectly for us. This is a big deal for us. It's a big deal for New Zealand and particularly Wellington. We're really pleased to be able to get these games to work together. That flows seamlessly from one game to the other. I mean, I sort of think it's a round as well, and it's not. It's worth mentioning that we're playing in Perth that Friday night. It'll be the Len Hall game, which they've promoted around Anzac Day for many years now. So it works very well, actually. I think that Anzac Day round.
All right, let's turn our attention to examining the first month of footy. And it's really interesting, Simon, that there are some really big blockbuster matches involving Victorian teams in the first 4 weeks. Is that a deliberate strategy? Obviously, we're looking here at Carlton and Richmond, who opened the season, and then we've also got a clash between Geelong and Hawthorn. There are some really big matches first up. Yeah,
look, there is. I think we do that most years, especially some of the Victorian games. Fans are keen to get to the MCG and Etihad and follow those games with big numbers. We've talked about round 1 a bit already, I think, but I guess the eagerly awaited Carlton Collingwood game is round 2.
With Mick Malthouse, obviously, as coach of the Blues now, that will be a huge build-up to that.
It'll be massive, and it's a Sunday afternoon. I think it's great for families, a big time slot. Hopefully we get a full MCG house there. We've got Collingwood Hawthorn, I think, in round 3. And round 4 is probably one of the best rounds of the year, in my opinion. A great Friday night game at the SCG, Swans and Geelong, and some big Victorian games, Richmond Collingwood. The first time Goddard plays against Essendon, St Kilda Essendon on Saturday twilight, West Coast Carlton Saturday night. So some big games in the first month, which is great. Good way to kick off the season. All
right, we're breaking down the 2013 AFL fixture here on afl.com.au. Let's take a look now at the teams that your club plays twice. We're going to take a little bit of time to look at this because it's fascinating, and there is an interesting philosophy behind it. As you can see, the Swans, being the premiers, have some tough clashes, but of course they do get the opportunity to play their crosstown rivals GWS twice. Just looking through the list there, it's potentially a little bit difficult for Hawthorn. The teams in the red that you can see here, these are teams that finished in the top 8. The teams in the blue finished in the bottom 10. So that's the kind of colour coding that we've gone for here. North Melbourne, I mentioned. You can also see Geelong there with big matches against Sydney and Hawthorn. Over the page, and we can see here that the Gold Coast, for example, don't play any of the teams in the top 8 twice. Talk to us a bit about, as we continue to look at this, the philosophy, Simon.
Look, I think it's an evolving philosophy. We've always had it that we've, I guess, had maximums and minimums based on where you finish in the ladder the year before. We have now 5 teams that played twice. In 2010, that was 7 teams. So that landscape has changed a bit. We've actively looked at, I guess, the matrix of who teams played twice to try and make, I guess, the sides that underperformed in 2012 potentially play amongst that group themselves to even things up a bit. Equity is really important across this fixture, and we have, I guess, some criteria around the top 8, how many times they play against bottom sides, and the only side in the top 8 to play against the Giants or Gold Coast twice is Sydney, based on that, I guess, that crosstown rivalry.
And how is that offset within the rest of their schedule?
I'm not sure we actively try and offset it, but look, Sydney have got 3 top 8 teams twice out of the 5. They've got quite a rigorous travel regime going to Tasmania in round 3, in New Zealand in round 5, as well as a trip to Simonds Stadium. So they've got quite a tough travel draw. I guess that's one thing that we look at, and they've got one of the highest 6-day break draws. So I guess these things even out across the way.
All right, well, one of the big questions I guess we're all asking is when will we see a grand final rematch? We're going to see 2 of them, Gil.
Yeah, they are. So I think the opening game is Hawthorn-Sydney in round 7 at the MCG on a Friday night. So that'll be obviously a massive game and good to be back at the MCG. And then they're back at ANZ Stadium in round 23 in Sydney. So, you know, what an amazing grand final, and you know, that game will be eagerly awaited. The other thing to talk about with Sydney is that they're going to be unfurling their premiership flag in round 2 at the SCG against Gold Coast. So amazing story for Sydney. I'm
tipping that Swans fans will be eager to get along to that, and going on current form, they're probably in for a massive win that day as well.
I'll be more bullish on Gold Coast than others, but we'll see.
All right, let's turn our attention to teams on the road. The days of Victorian teams having an uneven number of travelling fixtures is numbered. In fact, it's gone because it's been spread around a bit more evenly this time around, hasn't it, Simon?
Yeah, I guess we've got 2 teams now that are outside Victoria that weren't there 2 years ago. So every Victorian club now travels 5 times as a minimum, and basically 6 being the cap. And those that are above 6 are sides that now have home games outside of Victoria. So you'll find that North, Melbourne, Bulldogs and Hawthorn have more than 6 because they have games in different states.
Simon, for Tigers fans, I'm sure a lot of them cannot believe it, but they're going back to Cairns to play the Gold Coast Suns.
They are. They're going to play their bogey side up there. They haven't beaten the Gold Coasters yet, and it's round 16 next year on a Saturday twilight on Fox, which will be great. You know, a very highly rated game last year.
The bogey slot too, the twilight, isn't it?
It is for the Tigers especially. So.
And how long has this agreement got to go with them playing games up here? Because if they lose this year, there'll be an outcry from the Tigers faithful.
Look, the Cairns game's really well attended, so we'll continue to play games there. I think the Richmond side of the deal is it's last year, next year, so we'll sit down with Brendan Gale and the Tigers and see if they want to renew that.
Yeah, it might be contingent on this year's result. Everyone gets a taste, just coming back to Melbourne for a second, everyone gets a taste of the MCG in 2013 as well. You've made a point of that? Yeah,
look, every side plays at least 1 game there. That's been a request from clubs that their playing list and I guess their fans need the opportunity to play at the home of football for us, and we've delivered that this year.
I guess the running joke in football is that every club wants to play Collingwood at home if possible. That's not possible, but every club does get to play Collingwood or Essendon at home. Can you briefly explain the idea behind that?
Yeah, look, we've always had that rule as well. I mean, a number of rules in this fixture, but one of them is, I guess, for commercial sensitivities, that we think it's only fair that the 2 probably largest drawing Victorian clubs in Essendon and Collingwood, every club gets at least one of those teams as a home game. So we've always delivered that, and no change for 2013.
Gil, who is going to get the opportunity to flick the ceremonial switch down at Geelong? Were you venturing down the highway? This is a big deal for the Cats. They're going to have their new lights.
I'm sure it'll be Colin Carter and probably the Premier or the Victorian Sports Minister flicking the switch, but I'll be there.
It is a big deal.
Gold Coast, they've got a big year of unfurling and flicking and stuff. It'll be the opening game in round 10 under lights against the Gold Coast. So they'll unfurl Sydney's flag. They'll start up Geelong's lights. I don't know what else they'll be doing. So it's a big story down there to be playing footy under lights at Geelong. The redevelopment's a story in itself, and now moving to night games.
And the Saints under lights down there against Geelong.
And round 18 is going to be a big game. Yeah. St Kilda Geelong at Simonds is under lights. Saturday night's a big story, and I don't know how many years since St Kilda played down there, but it has to be 8 or 9 or 10. It's certainly not in my recent memory. So that'll be a big game down there. So
Simonds Stadium now lit up, and also Manuka Oval. There's some lights there too.
Yeah, that's a great story for us too, and it's a really strong Canberra fixture this year. So I think it's round 3. We open up with the first game in Canberra, GWS against St Kilda, and that will be a twilight game, so using the lights for the first time. I think they've also got the Bulldogs up in Canberra as well. They've got a good, strong fixture at Manuka.
All right, we're almost out of time. Just before we go, and I'm not sure if you guys can actually comment on this, but in the afl.com.au newsroom, we've been doing some work. This is the floating fixture round 23. Now, that's not the order that you've got them in the fixture book, but that's the order that we've put them in particular, the bottom 3 matches. That's what we're speculating will be played out on the final Sunday of the season in terms of which teams will probably be out of contention for the top 8. When will you actually make the decision on that, Simon?
Look, historically we try and make it as early as we can. It depends on how tight the top 8 is, I suppose. Look, this is designed entirely to make sure that our first week of finals is as good as it can be based on day breaks for clubs and travelling clubs. So we'll make the call about 4 or 5 weeks out, but we've got great flexibility now. It's also the last game at Amy Stadium, so Port Adelaide Carlton's a good game to have there, and we've got some flexibility just to work out where those all end up.
Port Adelaide Carlton will be both those teams will be closer. Well, Port Adelaide will be closer to the 8 than you think.
All right, Gil's talking them up. Thank you to you both for joining us. Much appreciated. Simon and Gil with us here. That is our first look at the fixture for the 2013 Toyota AFL Premiership season. Online right now here at afl.com.au. You can check out the full fixture. You can also take a closer look club by club to see who your team plays, when and where. Click the icon for your side, and then you can also hear more from Simon about your team's individual fixture. And we've got lots of analysis too for you from our team of reporters. The countdown is already on, and we cannot wait. For now, I'm Matt Thompson. Thank you so much for watching.